All right, we've got most people who have joined the webinar, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you again for your time today. We don't take for granted that everybody's time is valuable. Sometimes it's hard to carve out even 30 minutes or an hour for webinars like this. But today, we're going to really explore Alibi Cloud VS from a little bit different perspective. We've done tons of webinars in the past. They're very technically focused. And today, what we're really going to do is spend some time talking about some of the industry success stories that we're seeing out there. It's less technical today. It's more sales oriented, I would call it. Right? We're going to highlight some of the key industries where Bryce and the cloud team are seeing some real success in the marketplace. I think this points you and your teams in the right direction and gives you an idea of how we're selling, helping our dealers sell into industries. And we'll also talk about who some of the key decision makers are and some of the key talking points about industry to help you understand as you're out there pitching cloud or trying to grow your business by offering a VSaaS solution, how to do that, really the hot button topics to talk about. So it'll be a fun session today, a little bit lighter, less technical in nature, but still impactful. We hope it gives you guys a leg up on really getting up and someone else like that. Before we jump in, we'll go through some quick intros and then some ground rules for the webinar. I think really important. First and foremost, I'm Chris Miller. I'm the director of marketing here at Alibi Security. I've got the really smart guy when it comes to cloud, Bryce Brendan, on the line. Yes, he's sporting a mustache, so he looks about 10 years older than this photo there. But it's Bryce. So we're excited to have him here because he's the guy on the front lines who heads up our Alibi Cloud team to really work with our dealer partners and end users so they fully understand and make the best decision for their security solution and why Alibi Cloud VS might be a great opportunity and a great solution that fits into what they need. So Bryce will take over here in just a second after we get done with introductions. And we'll start rolling through success stories. We're excited to have Bryce here. For those of you who may not know who Alibi Security is, just a real quick overview, we've been around for 30 plus years. We've been doing this for a long time. Even for us, the last 3 years have been chock full of lots of changes and additional solutions that we've rolled out. Specific to cloud, Alibi Cloud VS was really the first cloud-based solution that we jumped into. Since then, in the last year and a half, something like that, we've actually rolled out a couple more cloud-based solutions. One's around analytics tied into traditional security solutions and AI-based analytics that also include gun detection, as well as a retail loss prevention solution that's also cloud-based. So those are two new exciting solutions that really kind of have helped us bolster and build out our cloud offerings amongst the traditional solutions that we continue to offer with our traditional recorders and security cameras. As you guys know, we're really a value-added provider. It's not just about selling gear for us. It's really about supporting you and your teams in a whole different way. And that really goes to the seniority of our sales support team. They're here for you pre and post sales. That's the main thing. And then more importantly, we've got a really robust technical support team. I don't think you'll find better technical support in the industry. So if those two things are valuable to you as a company, and the partners that you work with, we hope if you're not currently buying from Alibi, that you start looking at how we can partner with you to help you success. Again, we've been doing this a long time. We kind of know what you are. More importantly, as we go through this session and we talk more about Alibi Cloud VS, if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom. I'll be monitoring that throughout as Bryce is presenting and talking about our success stories. And I'll try to interject with really relevant questions related to each of the sections that he's going to be covering. I think we'll be covering a lot, so more than likely we'll cover 95% of what you guys have questions about. And again, bear in mind this is not a technical session. Right? This is more of a sales and positioning session. So if there are technical things that you guys want to know about, I'm going to reiterate it at the end of the session as well. But we've got a YouTube channel with lots of technical resources out there. So you ought to check out our Alibi Security YouTube channel and specifically look at our Alibi Cloud VS playlist. Bryce has done a bunch of how-to videos. Talks about the features and functionality of Alibi Cloud and how the UI works. And those will be great for answering a lot of those technical questions. So use Q&A and we'll hit your questions along the way. Okay? As I mentioned, with this industry success stories seminar or webinar, we're really going to talk a lot about what Bryce is seeing out in the market. Like I said, he is at the forefront of dealing with dealers and, more importantly, dealing with end users. He spends a lot of his time doing demos for both, and he's going to cover why end users are embracing cloud technology. We're also going to be talking a lot about the key decision makers, and for these specific industries, and we're going to cover 3 today. The reasons why they chose Alibi Cloud VS, right? And there are some very specific things when you're out there looking to target a specific industry that just makes sense to highlight, right? That are really important. And this will ultimately lead us to the kind of those key talking points or selling messages for each of those industries, right? And again, we're not going to cover every single industry. There's so many use cases for Alibi Cloud VS that we can cover all some of the ones that we don't get today, but we're going to cover 3 in kind of detail today. But more importantly, the reason for this session is about helping you guys really take advantage of kind of the groundswell that we're feeling and seeing from cloud video surveillance solutions in the marketplace. When we launched Alibi Cloud VS 3 years ago, it was a little slow going at first, right? But I think as more cloud technology permeates consumers' lives, end users' lives, everything from Alexa to Gmail to Dropbox to, you name it, cloud is everywhere, right? We have seen over the last 3 years a tremendous amount of interest and buy-in on cloud-based video security, right? And I think that is, like I said, the consumer and end user and our dealers have become more comfortable with the technology, but more importantly, they understand some of the really key benefits that it can deliver for them. So, we're excited you guys are on this session today because the feedback that Bryce gets from the marketplace is that if you're not out there selling cloud now, you're missing out. Right, and we'll talk about how you work cloud into your business practices, so it becomes more of kind of a regular muscle memory for you to bid cloud as part of your regular offering, and that's really where you're. So, Bryce, before I hand it over to you, did you want to add anything on the kind of as kind of a preamble of jumping into success stories? Did I miss anything?
No, I think we're about ready to hop into it and talk about the fun stuff, Chris. So okay. I'll go ahead and just say, like we say every single time, thank you all very much for your time and how valuable it is. I hope your weeks are going well so far. And to Chris's point, this is going to be a lot less of a kind of technical thrashing than normal. Typically we would kind of give you the bullet points, the features and the benefits, and then just say, hey, now go figure it out, right? Go apply it to your customer base. This is going to be a little bit, more of a concrete, pitch in the sense that we're going to actually give you some hopefully some really solid talking points and arm you with some tools in your tool belt. And we're going to talk about 3 main categories today. So we're going to first hit on medical and a couple of different types of settings. Then we're going to go to retail, and then we're going to finish off with education. So really the kind of experience that we've gathered over the past 2-3 years, to Chris's point, it's really, a lot of it is coming directly from end users. So really what we're hoping to do by sharing some of these stories is just really kind of arm you with the reasons why they went to the cloud, right? Or one of the more common things I discuss on a daily basis is why would they go cloud versus a traditional NVR based system, right? That's a question I get asked every single day. So we're going to hit on that, and then hopefully just kind of give you a real world scenario in where we sold cloud to each of these industries, so that you can kind of connect the dots and kind of see it all the way through. So
with that, I will note for everybody, because we always get this question: This webinar is being recorded. We'll get this over to our video team after this, and it should be uploaded, let's say by noon tomorrow. So it will be available. So if you're diligently trying to take notes on some of the talking points or key attributes of cloud and how it applies to industries, just know we're going to get this uploaded to YouTube, which is where we put all of our webinars, and it'll be available for you to spend more time.
Awesome. So kicking it off with medical, just to kind of share probably the most frequent talking points that we discuss on a daily basis during our conversations actually directly with medical facilities. We see kind of a consistent theme across the board. So one of the biggest call outs with medical is always going to be HIPAA compliance. So there are a lot of kind of variables that fall into making something, HIPAA compliant or not HIPAA compliant. But what's really going to, be attractive on the cloud side is going to be the network aspect, because the cloud actually provides a, ultra secure connection and can actually allow, various individuals within a medical organization to review or to view the cameras actually off site without ever punching a hole in their firewall. So they're actually never going to be exposing their network. And that has been a really big talking point, especially with, like a clinic type setting that may have multiple locations. Oftentimes they may have, one or two individuals responsible for managing that entire system. And if they can't, view each location remotely, or, they may have been having to set up like a VPN to do that, which can be, laborious and tedious. It just becomes a very clunky process for them. And, one thing I run into a lot is they may be treating each location as if it's its own independent system, right? So the man hours involved in maintaining that, getting on and accessing things, exporting footage, getting it to the police, you're just 10xing your work. And when you're talking to, the IT director of a hospital, they get paid good money to do IT director stuff, right? We don't want them wasting all their time looking at a guy that was sneaking around the back camera last night, right? So we want to make their overall time investment as minimal as we possibly can. And that kind of ties into that fourth bullet point down there. We do not want our end users or your end users wasting their time on the camera system. And that is a super common theme in the medical field. Kind of along the same talking point, the third bullet point down there, the centralized management of all cameras and sites. So this is particularly valuable, again, in the multi-location scenarios, but also if you think about, how future focused a lot of medical facilities are. A lot of them are not necessarily planning, for the next year. They're planning for the next 3, 5, 10 years in a lot of cases, right? So one of the questions they're going to ask you is, hey, what does this look like if I want to expand in the future? If I want to expand to a different location, or maybe I find some blind spots, or they build a new wing onto the building, right? So what's great about the cloud is we don't have to worry about, let's say, how many channels we have. If we're ever going to outgrow our hard drive space on the recorder, right? All those kind of complex question marks just kind of go away on a cloud-based system, because anywhere you want to stick up a new camera, you hang it, you link it back to the account, you move on, and that's really it. And then kind of the last point there, which might seem, kind of obvious, you're not managing any on-site storage. So the only thing actually on location are the cameras themselves. And then you just run them back to like a PoE infrastructure. So you're not having to worry about the most common fail points in any security system, which is the hard drive or the recorder itself. So again, we just want to make it as hands-off as we possibly can for these individuals. And Chris, if you want to go.
So Bryce, when you think about multiple locations, right? As the IT directors are one of the key decision makers.
Exactly.
Because they do have such stringent HIPAA requirements that still apply to the network integrity, right? And when you start talking about multiple locations, right, and recorders of each of those locations, remote access to each of those recorders, the IT director starts thinking about it in his head, oh my gosh, I've got to set up a VPN for each one of those networks and then create access points for people who need access to those recorders at those locations. So their head starts spinning going, oh my gosh. Number one, I hate VPNs. They're a necessary evil in some respects, right? And they're still valid in some respects, but they can be slow, they're hard to set up, you got to manage them. There's all these things that, you know, everybody's had experience with VPNs in the past, but they just don't work. You can't connect, something's gone wrong, they're troubleshooting. So you multiply that times those number of locations, it becomes a really burdensome headache for these IT directors to think about managing those traditional solutions out of each of those locations, right?
Yeah, that's a great call out. And with medical, especially, they're one of those industries where, secure remote viewing is not a nice to have, it's a must to have. So they're either going to be getting a cloud-based option or they're going to be setting up a VPN. And we're seeing more and more facilities saying, don't even give us a non-cloud quote because we don't want to mess with the headache anymore. And yeah, there we go. So we put a couple of different names up here because we've got kind of two groups that highlight a couple of different types of medical settings that we've seen kind of gravitate towards the cloud. The two at the top kind of fit the profile of the more multi-location, low to mid camera count. And so both Emerge Ortho and Texas Med Clinic have 10 plus locations, around 5 to 10 cameras per, depending on which one. And they're really taking advantage of the centralized management. That's definitely the core of the sales pitch. Is they've got one or two IT staff in charge of that entire camera system. So we're taking what is probably hours a week, right, of management time on these systems, and we're turning it into minutes, right? So saving them that time will make those IT individuals or loss prevention individuals your best friend really fast when you show them how much time you're going to save them. And then the two at the bottom, these are going to be a little bit more of your kind of like traditional medical center setting. So usually, one big campus and maybe broken up into a couple of different buildings. And one really consistent theme that I see in these types of settings is they normally start out with a smaller building and then they grow and they expand. So both of these individual companies at the bottom here actually started out with one recorder, and they ended up with more than 3. So they were actually having 3 independently functioning units in one building. So if they had an incident that took place across two different zones, right, 2 different recorders, they would literally have to log into one recorder on one computer, log into the other recorder on the other computer, and then try to match up the timestamps. Hopefully they're the same, right? So it becomes a nightmare, and kind of similar to the multi-site aspect. Anytime you're making a firmware update, anytime you're making a credentialing change, you're doing it not one time, you're doing it 3 times. So they again fit the theme of just drastically simplifying everything into one spot so that they don't have to waste a bunch of their time managing a camera system.
Yeah,
and those are really
keep in mind, everybody, that when we talk about medical clinics, I'm sure everybody's seen this in your local area. They're everywhere. They pop up in old Blockbuster buildings. They pop up in places that you wouldn't think they'd put a medical clinic. I think there are over 10 to 11,000 medical clinics throughout the U.S. right now, if not more. I think that may be an old stat. So the opportunity is really, really huge for these, right? And again, those medical clinics aren't excused from the HIPAA requirements, right? They are a medical facility, and therefore they must adhere to HIPAA requirements within everything. So they're still beholden, just like hospitals and other big medical centers, to follow those guidelines, and they have IT challenges just like the big hospitals and big facilities do. And then it gets more complex as you talk about that. Alibi Cloud makes it super easy to set.
Awesome. So now we'll go ahead and kind of switch lenses a little bit, and we'll move on to retail specifically. So you're going to see a lot of kind of common themes across each of these different industries, maybe just applied a little bit differently. So you're going to definitely notice some similar bullet points here. Kind of starting at the top, centralized management. So very similar to what we just discussed in the medical side, but just to kind of, connect it with a real world example. If you think about, let's say a owner of a franchise is a really common profile that I talk to. They are very actively involved in the day-to-day processes of their business. And while they not, don't physically have the capability to be at, 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever it is, locations at a time, they want the ability to tap in, keep an eye on the employees, make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. Normal stuff that you'd want to be able to do on a camera system. They want to be able to do that across all their locations at one time. So very common talking point, especially when you've got, again, kind of that same profile of 1 or 2 people that are really handling the majority of the load for a high volume of cameras on multiple locations. Kind of moving down to that second point there, similar to how the network integrity of the cloud helps with HIPAA compliance, it also helps ensure PCI compliance. So you're, again, not going to be exposing the network, which is going to protect your end users from getting dinged for having cameras exposed on the same network as, let's say, a point of sale system, right? So, and this is another one of those things that this is not a nice to have, this is a must to have, right? So especially when you're talking, again, in the multi-site locations or even a singular location where they're wanting to remote view, this just, again, puts that kind of wall in between and helps protect them against getting dinged and fined, because nobody wants to get fined. User management. This is a big call out specifically for retail, because we oftentimes see 2 different types of management that has to take place on a fairly consistent basis. So number 1 would be high turnover industries. We've sold a lot of projects on this talking point alone, where they are having to spend a ridiculous amount of time going in and giving people access and then taking it away. And for those of you that don't know, on a recorder, a lot of times you actually have to physically go to the location to make that change. And if you can think, like, if you've got multiple locations, you're doing that times however many locations you have, right? So somebody getting fired or, rehired over again, it can get really tedious really fast. And as simple as it sounds, taking this process and putting it into the cloud lets us have one uniform credential for each user across the entire system. So if I want to go in, somebody gets fired, they have access to 10 locations, right? I go in, I delete them out, they're gone immediately from all 10. I didn't have to drive to 10 locations. Same thing with if I let's say somebody in the organization is a low-level employee and then they get promoted, right? Well, maybe we want to give them some more permissions now that they're promoted. Maybe we want to give them the access to manage the camera system for an entire location, right? And now they can go in and actually view footage. They can export footage. And we've got those granular levels of control on the cloud. And again, it's a couple clicks of a button. We click save and then we move on. So this has been a really consistent talking point, especially with high turnover industries.
Yeah, and I do want to make a point there, right? I mean, some of our dealers will say, yeah, but if I gotta go change credentials, I can charge a service fee for that or a trip fee. Oh, okay, we get that in some respects, right? But the way we view cloud is the time you save not billing your customer and not making that drive, especially in some of these bigger cities like Dallas or Houston, even Austin, right? Or Atlanta, wherever you may be. That gives you more opportunity to provide a better level of service for your customers. It saves you time running a truck and allows you to have your guys or your techs out there installing jobs or your sales guys selling jobs rather than handling service calls for users. Right? And I think what you'll find is that when you change your mindset and go, yeah, but I could get a little money from the trip, right? That level of service that you're providing to your customer and not having to make that trip is a higher perceived level of service and easier usage scenario for them, where they go, oh man, I love this solution because it's simple. I can do it myself, right? I can click a button, I can add somebody, I can click a button and delete somebody, I can click a button and change camera access or credentials. Easy, right? So I want to make sure we kind of overcome that, because there is this immediacy of getting money, but there's also a longevity of how this solution delivers greater value to your customer and what that means for adding on in the future or scaling up or winning that next job. And again, saves you time so you can go out and sell another cloud job, so you're putting more RMR, recurring monthly revenue in your pocket.
And that's a great call out too, Chris, because one of the consistent talking points that I discuss with end users specifically is they do not like surprise cost. So I talk to a lot of dealers that are maybe tentative to pitch the recurring billing aspect. But what I run into more frequently than not is people will pay if they know what they have to pay, right? So most end users that I talk to the cloud about, as long as they know what they're paying on a monthly or an annual or whatever basis, that's attractive to them because they can budget for that, right? You can't budget for a surprise service call 2 or 3 times a month, right? So that's becoming more and more of a required feature in a lot of the conversations that I'm having. And some people are moving away from recorders simply because they have a service call once a week. So yeah, really good call out, Chris. So if you want to go back real quick, Chris, do you want to hit on one more real fast? So one that I talked to a lot about, especially in like the franchise restaurant space, is high retention times. So this could be like 90-day plus, right? Or even up to 2 years. A common issue that I talk to end users about is people slipping and falling by the soda fountain, right? Or claiming that they did anyways, right? So lawyers are literally looking up the statute of limitations in their state, seeing how long the camera has to record, and then they'll wait till the day after, and then they'll file suit, right? So we have been selling a lot of cameras because we have the ability to actually go in, and even if it's 1 or 2 cameras in the restaurant to start aimed at the problem areas, we can actually offer up to 2 years of retention time, which protects your end users against those lawsuits. So kind of a no-brainer scenario when you can go in, basically protect them 100% from like a slip and fall. And that is becoming more and more frequent, unfortunately, of a conversation that I've been having. And then the last point on here, the no on-site recording to tamper with. I talk a lot about this in retail specifically because unfortunately, it's usually not the smash and grab thief that's doing this, it's the employees. So unfortunately common for someone to do something malicious on site, and then they know exactly where the recorder is in the room. They go mess with it. They have, take out the hard drive, no evidence whatsoever of what they did, right? On the cloud, they don't have the option to do that. Even if they were to go tamper with the camera, it's already in the cloud, it's already recorded. No real gray area there. So a couple of quick ones, and these kind of fit the same profile, so I'll go ahead and just speak to them both. They kind of fall into the, all of those talking points that we just hit on, honestly, but both of these have, 5+ locations. They're tying them all together in one spot. It's become again, very consistent talking point for franchises, is tying everything together in one place. And then for BurgerFi specifically, they were having big problems with, getting people filing lawsuits against them. So I believe they're on over a 90-day recording right now. And then from that 90 days, they can go archive whatever they want, be protected, get it to the police, insurance, lawyers, whoever, right? So they just have that added level of protection. I think we basically hit on everything on retail.
Yeah, and I will say, I spent 17 years in retail, right? And Alibi Cloud makes it super easy to look across those multiple locations and really organize views by area. So, if your managers are supposed to be in their office from like 9 to 10, you can build a view of all 10 of your locations with just the managers. Right? So it really gives you the ability to kind of look at the zones and key areas of the retail stores or retail operations in a really easy to manage manner, right? And when you think about retail ops likes that capability. They're the guys and gals who are watching over what employee interaction is, their behavior, shrink and loss prevention, and they want to be able to kind of customize a view or have access to those views, and then and make it easy, right? They want to be able to flip back, forth between the stock room and the manager's office, and this makes it.
All right, so moving on to the last one we're going to talk about today, it's education. So this, in my opinion, is probably where I see our cloud competitors targeting most aggressively. So if you guys are, attempting to sell in the education space, you may have already run into some cloud players. They're extremely aggressive. And when you're talking about education, the talking points are almost the exact same, regardless of any school that you're talking to. So this one should be pretty black and white. So almost every time you talk to a school, reducing the IT overhead is going to be a very big talking point, because very similar to, the hospital scenario, they very likely have a limited number of people dedicated to managing not just the cameras, but everything at that school. So anytime there's a problem with the phone system, the cameras, the network infrastructure, they're the person in charge of it. So keeping their involvement as minimal as possible is very key. Again, creating unique user profiles is a really good talking point. You may have, administrators that want to access to certain problem areas, making sure kids aren't hanging out under the stairwells, right? Because if there's one thing kids are good at finding, it's blind spots and cameras, right? Or you may have like an on-site student resource officer. Cool, give them access, right? So they can keep an eye on things. But you can create basically any type of profile you want at a school, and that's been very attractive. One of the biggest talking points that I've been hitting on is schools almost always operate off of annual budgets, in my experience. And one of their biggest pain points with NVRs are those surprise costs, because they'll get a certain, amount of money allocated to their expenses at the beginning of the year. They'll, budget it out, they'll spend it and go from there. So if you've got a surprise cost every month of somebody coming out to swap out a hard drive or change a credential or help you export footage, those all add up very, very quickly. And on the cloud, we basically take all those out of the equation. Kind of on a similar note, scalability. Being that we can scale as much as we want to in the future with really no limitations whatsoever, we avoid making that school have to have a surprise NVR upgrade. That's one thing I've heard a lot from schools specifically, is they started out with a 32 channel recorder, right? And 25 cameras. Well, now they're adding exterior cameras, and now it's going from 25 cameras to 56 cameras or whatever it may be. Well, immediately you're taking that NVR and you're replacing it, or you're adding a second NVR, and then you have two separate systems, right? So again, that could be an example of a surprise cost that people just really aren't looking to build into their budget. So again, we make that cost very predictable in the cloud. They want to add cameras in the future, they buy it, they hang it, they know exactly what that cost is going to be. So it's much more predictable for them and easier to get the funding allocated towards the cameras. Because if you go, pitch it to the key holder guy who's in charge of giving you the grant money, wherever the money is coming from, if you've got big question marks all over that funding request, it's a lot harder for them to give you the right amount of money, as if you know exactly what that cost is going to be allocated over X number of years. And then that last point we've hit on 3 or 4 times already, so I think we're good there. And then a couple of different types of scenarios for schools. One is just general security and safety. So local high school here in Hyde Park, or in Austin, Hyde Park, they've got cameras that are basically just watching all areas. They can proactively send notifications if need be, if certain problem areas are being accessed at certain times of the day. But then also it actually operates in conjunction with an actual NVR system as kind of a supplementary solution. So they started out with an NVR. We gave them cloud kind of as an added layer on top of that. And then as NVR cameras start to fail, they can just pop up cloud cameras and then eventually have everything on one singular pane of glass. And the big kind of pain point for them originally was they didn't really know how to manage the system too well. So oftentimes they would have to call up and ask questions a lot, right? On the cloud, super easy, super intuitive. They're not calling somebody every week to do something simple like export footage. And then kind of the last example, this next school that I've worked with, they had a pretty complex building infrastructure where they had certain problem areas they were looking to target, and they got a certain number of allocated dollars towards solving that problem. Doing it with an NVR or multiple NVRs would have been very complex and very expensive because we would have been putting up, specific cameras in specific buildings. So we would have had to buy a recorder for each building, right? Well, on the cloud, what we did is we just pitched, hey, just stick cameras up where you need them to be, tie them back to your cloud account, manage it all from one spot, solve your problem right there. And that was kind of another one of those no-brainer scenarios. We saved them a lot of money and a lot of time and configuration time as well. And really, I won't hit on all these, but just kind of like a summary of a couple of the key callouts of like what cloud does better than NVRs. I think really the common one that you've probably heard 100 times on this meeting by now has to do with the management and reducing their time investment in the system, right? So this is kind of just a snapshot of some of the technical limitations that recorders have the cloud actually solves. So again, a couple of the notable ones: unlimited users, right? Unlimited locations, automatic updating, automatic cybersecurity updating, right? Just to name a few. So that's really what we've been talking about all day today, is what our NVR doesn't do as well as the cloud. Right?
This is the technical part of the webinar today. That's all.
Right.
That's all you get. But to Bryce's point, it's a nice summary of some of the things that he's covered as we rolled through the different industries and some of the case studies.
And then kind of the last slide here. So I am personally seeing a lot of cloud surveillance companies targeting end users directly and trying to sell them, especially in the three industries that we've been talking about. And these are really who they're targeting and why each profile is so invested in a cloud-based system, right? So we've talked a lot about IT staff today. Really has to do with reducing time investment, right? Moving on to administrators. This is another frequently targeted job title. So kind of the similar talking points: centralized management, unlimited users, analytic-based searching, which reduces time. So instead of looking across 100 cameras one by one, you pull up your detections across all of them at one time, filter, boom, you find it in 2 seconds, right? And if any of you want a demo, by the way, I'm happy to show you any of that. Just let me know. And then obviously decision makers, right? This again comes back to, we want to be able to predict our expenses. And it's surprisingly difficult to do that on an NVR-based system. So making it predictable will go a long way. And then same thing, you got to be compliant. You gotta maintain network integrity, make sure that you have what you're required to have, and the cloud makes being compliant, but also have a system that's convenient. Compliant and convenient don't often go hand in hand in this industry. So being able to have both of those is a really key call out.
So there are no open questions right now, right? So I think we're going to give that.
All too easy. Yeah, I would just leave.
Yeah, but I will ask you one. I'll set you up here. So as you're out there talking to end users, share with the folks that are attending right now, if they're not making cloud part of their kind of normal bidding process, right? When somebody comes in there and bidding security stuff, could they, could they be missing out on business based on what you're hearing, what you're seeing from competitors, and just kind of the general kind of buzz in the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I would say we're not 100% there in these industries as far as them saying give me cloud or give me nothing. But a couple of these industries, especially certain kind of subsections of these industries, we're almost there. So if you guys are out there battling against a cloud competitor and you've got an IP, like an IP-based system or an NVR, you're gonna have a really uphill battle if you try to go toe to toe. because they're looking for a feature set. They've got a certain number of dollars to throw at it. And if they can throw it at cloud, they're going to throw it at cloud. And education is one that really pops out of my mind, that other cloud companies are extremely aggressively pursuing. And to kind of take this one step further, I would strongly recommend that you lean on us to help you out, with this process, because that's what I do all day long is I talk about cloud with end users, and I oftentimes pitch against other cloud or against NVRs. And if you're tentative to get into that space because you don't feel like you're there yet with the talking points, or you just don't have the reps underneath your belt to be able to speak against maybe a competitive cloud solution, I would love to help you get there. Me or anybody on the cloud team, right? We're happy to provide a live demonstration and kind of hit on the selling points and help you get there. So please don't feel like that's a big barrier, because anytime you hit us up, we'll prioritize those meetings and we'll get you where you need to be.
And Bryce, you're even seeing people opt for cloud even though it's more expensive than traditional.
Well, yeah, 100%. My pitch to people is normally, hey, if you're even going to be within 10% on cloud versus non-cloud, why not go with a better system? And oftentimes we find that when you go cloud, you save in a lot of ways you may not even know until they're presented to you. Like a couple that we hit on today, right? Reduce the man hours you're spending, reduce the surprise costs, make it more scalable in the future, get rid of all those, kind of cyclical problems that happen when you have to replace hardware every X number of years, right? So I actually find that over time, cloud and NVR-based systems can be pretty close. Cloud can even be a little bit less in a lot of cases. So why not get a better system?
And again, for those on the webinar, we're not bashing traditional systems, right? The Alibi Vigilant line that we carry is super reliable, low failure rates, but fundamentally, as dealer installers and integrators, you know that the number one cause of failure are the hard drives and the ports, right? There are people that want to know what their costs are going to be on a monthly and annual basis. And even if you build in service trip fees in your quote for a traditional system, there's still that what if. Oh, what about the hard drive that fails? What about the recorder that goes out? What if a NIC card goes out? Well, that'll be incremental. Well, they don't want that unknown out there that could potentially impact their budget, especially when you think about schools. So schools, we've seen the move to cloud and people paying more than they probably would have with a traditional solution to have that peace of mind. And it's always, the footage is always going to be safe, and the cost is what the cost is. We have had a couple question follow-up. So talk a little bit about the data centers that are used to secure the footage.
Sure. Yeah, great question. So we use one of the leading surveillance specific data center companies in the world right now. They're Eagle Eye Networks. So they are one of the pioneers in the space as far as, migrating away from like a generic AWS server, right? So the entire infrastructure is designed specifically for camera data. And it also has to meet a certain criteria to actually be, a tier 4 center, which is what it's labeled as. So you meet certain requirement to get there. Right now, basically the important talking points, it's kind of the elite of the elite in that sense. And it's a similar setup to like what Chase Bank would use. So if the root of the question is like, hey, are we exposed to attacks, or is it inherently at risk because it's going through the internet? The answer is really no, because it's end-to-end encryption to some of the most secure data centers in the world.
So if you look at T4 data centers, that's where all the footage gets. Then we've got another question about addressing profitability for the dealer installer. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because there is that hesitation, right? So say, look, I'm not getting the recorder set up front. I'm not getting the recorder install up front. So it's less time, it's less money up front. But how are dealer partners who have really embraced cloud?
Sure. Yeah. So there's really kind of 3 main points that I hit on when I discuss profitability with a dealer partner. And first and foremost, RMR, right? That's a no-brainer. Everybody loves RMR. You're just constantly getting money on a monthly or an annual basis wherever you want to set it up, right? So That's a no-brainer. If you're concerned about missing out on the upfront, hardware, sell annual, make it a capital expense, right? We've had a tremendous amount of success positioning it that way. Get the payment up front, move on. Nobody's messing with a monthly payment. You get your money up front, everybody's happy. That's been a very successful formula. The second point would be your time on site is going to go down. It's not going to take you as long to install these cameras. The hardest part is running the cable, hanging it. And then as far as configuration goes, you log in, the cameras get discovered, you click connect, you leave. Everything else is remotely manageable, which kind of bleeds into the third and final point. You really shouldn't be rolling trucks for cloud systems. Very, very rarely do you need to roll a truck. And the only time you need to roll a truck is if there's a physical hardware problem. Really, everything else you can fix offsite, especially when you can take advantage of like our in-house tech support, as well as myself in some cases. We can get you fixed up most of the time very quickly because the cloud is so easy to diagnose and fix without having to actually physically go on site. So I would say your time investment in these systems is going to be lower. The money that you make is on the upfront could be the same, and then you're going to continue to get paid on that as long as they have the system.
That's a great call out. A great question too. So thanks for that. As we kind of move to the end here, I mentioned YouTube, right? And this is my plug as the marketing guy for a YouTube channel. We are constantly putting new content up here. In the last couple of months, we put a lot of Alibi Cloud VS how-to videos up that show you the ins and outs of the UI. So if you haven't spent much time learning about Alibi Cloud VS or in these webinars, there's some great, easy to digest short videos out there where Bryce walks through the UI functionality and features. So I highly recommend you guys and gals go out there and check those out. And more importantly, as we talk about our support for you and kind of how we like to position ourselves as different in the industry, Bryce and team are available for you guys. If you need a live demo just so you understand more about cloud and you can ask all your technical questions, give them a call. You have an end user or a potential customer that's interested in cloud, get Bryce on the line until you become comfortable and more knowledgeable about how to sell cloud. We are here to support you. We know that there is a tidal wave of cloud opportunities out there. And as you guys go out and pitch and start getting in that, like I said, that muscle memory of taking a traditional video security bid, doing an alternate version with 1 or 2 cloud cameras on it, you're going to get more comfortable with the acceptance from the end users, but more importantly, you're going to start getting some of those questions, those really meaningful, relevant questions that are coming from your potential customers and end users that Bryce can help you answer. Right? You don't have to have all the answers right now. We're here to help you gain traction. And the thing we get so excited about is it ultimately saves you time and effort by not having to build trucks. It gives your customers better peace of mind. It's more loyal customers. Gives them predictable expenses, and ultimately helps you build a part of your revenue stream that's repeatable month after month, year after year, which is what we really want to see and what you should want to see in your business, right? All this hard work you're doing, let's do some hard work that continues to pay dividends over time, right? Our team is here to help you. So just know that. Other than that, I don't think we have any other questions. Bryce, do you have any closing comments before we close this down?
No, just thank you all very much. And if anybody wants a demo, reach out and we'll be happy to knock it out for you.
Yeah. So again, appreciate everybody's time today. We really enjoyed walking through some sales tactics and talking points for these industries. There's a lot more to uncover. We continue to learn a lot in cloud, but more importantly, we're here to share that knowledge with you guys and help you make cloud successful in your business. So let's know how we can help. We'll see you next time on our next webinar. Thank you.